I guess you could say I was just another man chasing peace, but that would be putting it too simply. For most of my life, I worked as a high school teacher in a small town in British Columbia, Canada. I taught social studies, coached the volleyball team, and counted the years until retirement. It was a good life, steady and comfortable, but deep down, I always felt like something was missing. After my divorce in 2019, that feeling only grew stronger. I had spent 30 years building a future with someone who decided one day that it wasn't enough. We sold the house, split the savings, and our two grown-up kids did their best to support us both. But the truth was, I was alone again. At 58, I didn't know what I wanted anymore. But I knew I didn't want to spend another winter shoveling snow, going to the same grocery store, or sitting in the same living room where so many arguments had happened. That's when I started thinking about Thailand. I had visited once in 2012 for a 2-week holiday. I went to Chiang Mai and then down to the beaches near Krabi. Back then, I was still married, and the trip had felt more like an escape than a vacation. I remember sitting on a quiet beach one afternoon, watching long-tail boats sway in the tide and thinking, I could live here. I didn't tell anyone about that thought. It felt too far away, too unrealistic. But now, without anyone to answer to, I started looking into it seriously. I read every article, every forum post, and watched every video I could find. I wasn't chasing excitement or wild parties. I just wanted peace. Someplace warm, affordable, and gentle on the soul. By the end of 2022, I had sold my car, packed up what little I wanted to keep, and said goodbye to Canada. I had saved about 500,000 Canadian dollars. With my pension and a bit of freelance tutoring online, I figured I could make it work. When I landed in Bangkok, I didn't feel scared. I felt light, like I had finally stepped out of a storm and into the sun. After a full day of exploring Bangkok, I headed back to my hotel. I was on the BTS, and coincidentally, I got off at Nana, as I really had to use the bathroom. I got to the nearest restroom in a bar, not knowing the scene around Nana. A friendly woman started a conversation, and I hadn't felt so good in a while. She was attentive, caring, had a great sense of humor, and most importantly, she made me feel like a man. I took her back to my hotel, and had a great time. No matter how long and hard I think about her, I don't even remember her name. After that night, I took a taxi straight to Pattaya. That's where the story really begins. Because that's where I met her. Her name was May, and in the beginning, she felt like the answer to a question I had been asking for years. I had only planned to stay in Pattaya for a few weeks. I thought I'd get a feel for the city, try some local food, sit by the beach, maybe rent a motorbike and explore the nearby temples, that kind of quiet life. But Pattaya had other plans for me. It was louder, more chaotic, more colorful than I expected. Neon lights, open-air bars, music drifting through the streets, and a kind of energy that pulled you in. I wasn't looking to meet anyone, really. After what I'd been through back home, the idea of falling in love again felt like a story someone else would tell, not me. But then I walked into a small coffee shop, just off Second Road. It wasn't fancy. A few wooden tables, ceiling fans spinning above, and a narrow balcony that overlooked a quiet side street. I ordered a hot Americano, and sat down with a notebook I barely used, and that's when she walked in. Maybeer. She wore a plain white blouse, and had a quiet smile. She wasn't like the girls I'd seen at the busier bars or walking along Beach Road. There was something softer about her, something that reminded me of the way people used to carry themselves when they still believed in good things. She was looking for a table, and the cafe was full. I nodded toward the empty seat across from me. She paused for a second, then smiled and sat down. We talked, not much at first. Her English was decent, better than she gave herself credit for, and we found a rhythm quickly. She told me she was 35, from Bangkok originally, but had been living in Pattaya for the last few years. She worked part-time at a small clothing boutique nearby, and helped her aunt run a weekend stall at the market. She didn't ask me what I did. She didn't ask about my money. She just asked if I liked Thailand. I told her yes. I told her I was here to breathe again. She laughed and said, "Then you came to the right place." We ended up sitting there for nearly 2 hours. Looking back, I realize now how quickly I let my guard down. But at the time, it just felt easy, natural, comfortable in a way that caught me off guard. We exchanged numbers before she left, and as she walked away, I remember thinking, this one feels different. That thought would stick with me for a long time, and it would cost me more than I ever imagined. May and I started meeting up a few times a week. At first, it was casual: coffee after her shift, a quick meal at a street stall, sometimes a walk down the quieter parts of the beach when the sun was low and the breeze made the heat bearable. She wasn't pushy. She didn't flirt in the way you'd expect from someone who'd been in Pattaya long enough to learn how the game worked. And if I'm being honest, that's what made me fall for her. I'd spent a good part of my life building walls. After what happened with my ex-wife, I didn't trust anyone easily. I had come to Thailand thinking I was just going to live quietly, keep to myself, and maybe enjoy the sunsets. But with May, it was like someone found a hidden door in one of those walls and gently pushed it open. About a month after we met, she invited me to visit her apartment. It was a small place on the edge of town, up 3 flights of stairs, the kind of building that had more fans than air conditioners and a tangle of power cables hanging just outside the window. She had 2 cats, a faded couch, and a small TV that only worked if you hit it in the right spot. It wasn't much, but it was hers, and she was proud of it. We sat on the floor eating grilled chicken and sticky rice from a takeaway box, watching a Thai soap opera I didn't understand, and I remember thinking, this is better than any night I ever had in those quiet, expensive restaurants back in California. Things moved slowly, then suddenly, not at all. One morning, over breakfast, she looked up from her plate and said, "You don't have to go back to your condo tonight." I didn't. From then on, we lived together. There wasn't a conversation, no official decision. It just happened like most real things do, without fanfare. I paid for the groceries. She cooked every night. We laughed a lot, argued once in a while, and shared stories from our past. I told her about my job, how I used to work long nights, staring at screens and solving problems that never really mattered. She told me about her parents, her childhood in Bangkok, and how she ended up here in Pattaya. Her story was simple, but it carried weight. Her mom got sick a few years ago. Her father passed when she was young. May had to start earning quickly, and Pattaya was where the jobs were. She never said what kind of jobs, and I never asked. Maybe I didn't want to know. Maybe I should have. 6 months had passed since I met May. It felt like half a year, but in a strange way it also felt like we had known each other much longer. We had built a quiet rhythm. I still had my condo, but I barely saw it. Her apartment, as simple as it was, had become home. I was beginning to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time: stability. One night, over a quiet dinner, May surprised me. She told me her mother's health had taken a turn. She wanted to go back to Bangkok to help care for her. Her eyes were soft, but there was a look of concern behind them. "I'll go with you," I said, without thinking too hard. She looked up, surprised. I think she expected me to hesitate. I didn't. Maybe part of me saw this as a natural next step, or maybe I just didn't want to lose her. We packed what little we had and left Pattaya a few days later. Back in Bangkok, May reconnected with her family, and I found myself living in a place very different from the beach town I'd grown used to. The city was louder, faster, and more complicated. But strangely, I felt more at peace than ever. May's mother lived in a modest house in a narrow alley just off the main road in Bangkok. We rented a small condo nearby. Life was simple. I'd walk May to her mother's place in the morning and spend my days working on freelance consulting gigs from my laptop. Even in retirement, it felt good to keep my brain sharp. And the extra money helped. When I wasn't working, I explored the local markets, made friends with a few shopkeepers, and learned to order my lunch in Thai. My days were full, not because they were busy, but because they felt meaningful. May spent long hours helping her mother. She never once complained. At night, we'd sit together watching old movies on my laptop. She loved romantic comedies, even if she didn't catch every joke. I didn't care. Watching her laugh made me laugh too. A few months into this new life, we were sitting at a small restaurant by the canal, eating boat noodles, when she reached for my hand. "Do you think we could build something more permanent?" she asked. She meant us, a life, a future. I smiled and nodded. Deep down I'd already decided. That night I asked her to marry me. She didn't cry, she didn't scream, she just smiled, leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Okay." I remember thinking, this is it. This is what peace feels like. But looking back, I now wonder if I was too swept up in the comfort, too blind to the little things. The signs were there, I just didn't want to see them. After we got engaged, everything felt light. We didn't make a big deal about the wedding. There was no elaborate ceremony, no gold necklaces, no endless speeches, just a quiet visit to the district office, a few signatures, and two people deciding to walk the same path together. I was 61. May was 34. We had little in common on paper, but somehow we made each other feel complete. We lived in a rented condo on the edge of Bangkok, but one afternoon, May turned to me and asked something that seemed innocent at the time. Wouldn't it be better to have our own place? It didn't feel like a demand, more like a shared dream, a home we could call ours. Somewhere her mother could live comfortably, maybe even a place to start a small cafe. She had always wanted that. I had the money. Years of saving, cautious investing, and a lifestyle that never demanded much had left me with more than enough to retire comfortably. And honestly, I wanted to give her that stability. We started looking at land just outside the city. Something quiet, away from the choking traffic and crowded alleys. Eventually, we found a small plot in Nonthaburi, not too far from the river. It wasn't glamorous, but it had charm, and May said she could picture us growing old there. I should have asked more questions. The land would be in her name, of course. Foreigners can't legally own land in Thailand. I didn't think twice. She was my wife. I trusted her. That's what marriage means, right? We hired a local builder who came recommended by her cousin. I didn't know the first thing about construction in Thailand, so I let her handle most of the communication. I was just the guy writing the checks. At first, things moved fast. The foundation went in. The walls came up. Each time we visited, May's face lit up like a child seeing their birthday cake. It made me happy to see her happy. But then the requests started. We need a stronger roof. It's the rainy season soon. The kitchen needs to be Western style for your cooking, you know? The tiles weren't delivered. We have to pay again. I didn't ask too many questions. I just paid. In total, it was over 3.5 million baht. I told myself it was fine. I could afford it. And more than that, it felt good to build something. When the house was finished, it was beautiful. Simple but peaceful. A small garden out front, a covered porch with enough space for 2 chairs and a coffee table. Inside, it was everything I had hoped for. We moved in, just the two of us. At first, it felt like a dream. Until her mother moved in, then her cousin's son. They didn't ask, they just arrived. With bags, with furniture, with expectations. And May, she said nothing. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to be the foreigner who told her family to leave. So I said nothing, but I felt the dream slipping through my fingers. One night, as I lay awake listening to the sound of her cousin's son watching TV too loud in the next room, I wondered, how did I end up here? I had built a house, but I no longer felt like I lived in it. I tried to make it work. I really did. At first I told myself it was just temporary. Her cousin needed a place to stay while he looked for work. Her mother didn't like living alone. And the cousin's son, well, kids were kids, maybe he'd learn to keep the volume down. But weeks turned into months. The quiet breakfasts with May turned into crowded mornings where I couldn't even find a clean cup. The peaceful evenings became hours of noise, with someone always watching TV, playing music, or cooking at odd hours. I had once dreamed of planting flowers in the garden. Now it looked more like a shared parking lot, filled with laundry racks and motorbikes. I spoke to May about it, gently at first. Do you think maybe we could have a bit of space? Just the two of us. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "They won't stay long." But they did. I don't think I ever saw that cousin look for a job. Her mother started taking over the kitchen, which would have been fine if I didn't feel like a guest in my own home. They never thanked me. Never asked. It was as if they believed the house belonged to them, and maybe, legally, it did. I began to feel like a stranger in my own life. I'd leave the house just to get some air, walk along the canal, eat lunch alone at a street vendor's stall. I didn't recognize the man I had become, tired, tense, constantly counting down the minutes until I could return to the quiet of my room. May noticed, of course. "You're not happy," she said, one night, lying beside me. "I'm not," I admitted. She was quiet. Then she said something I didn't expect. "Let's move." I looked at her. "What do you mean? Just you and me," she said. "Let's leave. We'll find somewhere else." I didn't know what to say. A part of me didn't believe her. But the next morning, she was already searching for condos near the coast. By the end of the week, she had found a place in Hua Hin, not too big, quiet, near the beach. We packed up, said our goodbyes. Her mother cried, her cousin sulked. But May didn't look back. When we arrived at the new condo, it was like the air was lighter. The sea breeze came through the open windows, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. We were alone, just us, and for the first time in a long time, I started to believe maybe things would be okay. Hua Hin was different. Not just the location, but the feeling, the energy. The quiet hum of scooters passing by, the soft murmur of waves at night, the warm scent of grilled seafood along the beach roads. It felt like life had slowed down, just enough for me to catch up with myself again. May and I fell into a new rhythm, mornings with strong coffee on the balcony, afternoons spent walking hand in hand through local markets, and evenings sharing meals at quiet little restaurants we'd stumble upon. We didn't talk much about what had happened at the old house. I think we both needed the silence. It took me a while to admit it, but I had been angry, not just with her family, or with May for letting it get so out of hand. I was angry with myself for slipping into the same pattern again, giving too much, not speaking up, and convincing myself that love alone could fix everything. But May surprised me. She didn't ask for anything now. No more projects, no great ideas from relatives, no schemes to make money fast or impress the village, just a quiet, simple life. And maybe for the first time, she didn't want anything more than that. One evening, we sat on the beach with a cheap bottle of wine and watched the sun go down. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "For what? For everything before. For letting them take advantage. For not standing up for us sooner." I looked at her. The golden light touched her face, and for the first time in months, I saw the May I'd fallen for back in Pattaya, warm, thoughtful, a little unsure of the world, but trying her best to make it work. "I forgave you a long time ago," I said. "We just got lost." She leaned against me. "Then let's not get lost again." And we didn't. It wasn't perfect. Some months were tighter than others. We had disagreements. We missed some things from our old life, but we also learned how to talk, how to protect each other, and most importantly, how to set boundaries. I kept more of a watchful eye on our finances. May started teaching Thai online a few hours a week, more for pride than for income. I guess what I'm trying to say is, we found our way back. It didn't happen all at once, and it didn't erase the mistakes of the past. But in the small quiet moments, when we were laughing over breakfast, or watching the rain fall on the sea, I realized that we'd built something stronger than I thought possible. This wasn't the ending I had imagined when I first came to Thailand, but maybe it was the one I needed all along. Looking back, it's strange to think how close I came to losing everything, not just the money or the house, but a part of myself I didn't even realize was fading. When I first arrived in Thailand, I was chasing a feeling, a sense of freedom, of adventure, of finally doing things on my own terms. What I didn't know was that freedom comes with its own risks, and love, especially the kind you find in a foreign land, under palm trees and neon lights, can either be the wind in your sails or the hole in your boat. I made mistakes. I know that now. I let people push me past what I was comfortable with. I ignored my gut. I confused silence for peace. And I kept hoping that things would get better without actually doing anything to change the direction we were going. But the thing is, not everything was a loss. Yes, I lost money. Yes, I lost trust. Yes, I nearly walked away from something I thought was love. But I gained clarity. I learned what real partnership looks like. I found out how strong I could be when I stopped trying to be the easygoing guy who just goes along with everything. And May, she's still here. Still the woman who, despite everything, walked away from her family when they crossed the line. Still the woman who laughed with me under stormy skies in Hua Hin. Still the woman who holds my hand when we walk through the market, not because she needs anything, but because she wants to. Some people say, once trust is broken, it can never be fully repaired. I don't believe that. I think trust is like a house, you can knock it down. Yes, but if you rebuild it slowly, brick by brick, and you do it together, not alone, it might even end up stronger than before.